Hello, Flame Zombie.
Hello, Shauner.
Milk and cookies kept you awake all night?
My fiance's birthday cake, actually.
Oh, okay. Do you know what that reference was from?
No, but I have heard it before.
J.F. Sebastian goes and visits Tyrell
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay.
to do a chess move.
Yep, it's been a while.
Absolutely no security in that building.
Yeah, well,
So, on the stream with Black Lodge Games today in the chat, people were talking about first person, second person, third person. Not even paying attention. Well, this was before the stream started, I guess, because the guys were late as usual. Because, they want to wait for the audience to build up before they show up,
yeah.
which makes sense.
Hmm.
So in the green room, such as it is, we were all chit-chatting about what's the difference. I'm immersed still if I'm talking in third person during a game. But you have to qualify that, right? You have to say what's everyone else doing. If you're talking in third person, is everyone else talking in third person or just you?
Hmm.
What do you
And
think about that? If only one person talks in third person during a game?
until you mentioned it, I don't think it bothered me a ton, but I think it's going to be one of those things where I'm paying attention to it now and it's going to ruin it forever for me. No. But you always, in general, with these role playing, people in the role playing hobby are the worst about whataboutism. What about my group? My group does this and it works out fine. Anytime there's whataboutism, you have to ask compared to what?
A whataboutism?
A whataboutism,
I haven't
well,
heard of one of those yet.
yeah, it's whataboutism is
I do that all the time. What about?
yeah. And when you ask that question, it opens a deeper wormhole of, well, compared to what? Your group, well, my group does it that way and it turns out fine. That's something you'll hear a lot. That's sort of a what about my group? Oh, if this is such a bad thing to do, then why isn't it bad for my group? Then you have to ask, well, compared to what other method have you tried? And very often they haven't tried any other methods, so
Yeah, because when I ran GURPS games, and also when I was a player of GURPS, I always spoke in third person.
mhm.
Once in a while, a player would say, "I do this," and it was like, okay, he's different, but we still allow it.
Mhm.
He can live for now. But now, since hanging out with Rick and Crispy and Mr. Max, you, Nicholas, Zonalar, the usual suspects, I start thinking, well, what am I? How have I been doing it? How have I
Mhm.
been doing it wrong? Because I didn't care one way or the other.
Yeah.
But then it comes down to that one guy who wants to say I, or that one guy that wants to say he. But if everyone's saying I, or if everyone's saying, he, they, them, those, I guess it's okay. But
I tend to view the
somebody, who was it? Do you remember that asked or said you can't be immersed unless you say I? Was it Rick that was
oh,
doing that?
I don't know.
I can't remember who it was
I do
in the
remember
group.
somebody saying that though. I tend to view like I'm always cognizant, even when whether I'm using I or whether I'm using he, of the fact that I'm playing a character, and
Me too.
me, am a different person. So whenever somebody says I, I know they don't mean I, Tyler. They mean I, the character.
Right.
But when somebody says, so because of that, when somebody says, hopefully they don't say my character, they say their character's name or he, she, whatever. But my character does X. That's the same thing. I know they're playing a character, so that doesn't take me out of it at all. It's just like, yeah, your character's doing the thing. Sure. I'm doing the thing. Yeah, your character's doing the thing. It's a different way to say the same thing.
Yeah.
So for me, but that would be to me a session zero thing where if it does bug somebody in the group a lot one way or the other, then I would be like, oh, okay, well let's try to keep it on the third person, keep it on the first person, whichever.
Yeah, because back in the day, I don't remember. I guess in Google Hangouts, I think we had a little tabs at the bottom of the screen where we could put our character names.
Mm.
But oftentimes players wouldn't do that. So you're just staring at the player, not their. You don't see a
Yeah.
name or
Yeah.
avatar or anything. This is when I was first learning how to roleplay, and I got in the habit of saying, "My character Max, swings open the doors," and I would say my character's name a few times at the beginning of the game, just so the players would know who my character's name was.
Mm-hmm.
But then later on, we started putting our name tags on the screen, character names, little NPC faces and portraits and stuff, background pictures behind us, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was still in the habit of saying my character's name. So I wonder if some of the players were like, duh, that's what your name tag says or something. You don't have to keep telling us your name. But then I was in another group or another session. This is like 8-9 years later. I'm in someone's session, probably Rick's. And I noticed I was saying he. Everyone else was saying hi. I think. Can't remember the game, or it was a practice session. Maybe me and Sean Cherry were probably practicing. Before there was 4D, we were practicing. We were on an abandoned space station. We were building the space station with our heads in our narration where we go. We were adding to the spaceship we were on. The hallways, the corridors, the rooms, the decks, the airlocks. And Sean Cherry says, he goes, I go into the elevator and there's blood inside. Something like that. Or I go in the elevator and I notice blood. And I was like, I didn't think much about it. I don't know. I don't remember how Rick thought about it, but I thought it was cool that he added the blood. We didn't know it was going to get gory until Sean Cherry said that with his character.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a 4D thing.
Mm-hmm.
None of us were GMs. We're all players. And we're just adding. Each time it's our turn, we're doing something, adding to what's already been established. And I think those two guys were saying I, and I was the one guy saying he still. I don't know if we recorded that session or not.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about it because it's not something I've thought about a ton. But I guess when you're controlling a character in a video game, and role playing games obviously aren't video games; they're not the same. But like a CRPG or something like that, I'm thinking, playing, either the old Fallout 1 and 2, you're clicking on your character, it's the chosen one or the vault dweller or, the lonesome wanderer is going to the door, doing this, opening that, shooting that thing. Yeah, you're role-playing that character, you're in total control of the actions, barring the times where, the narration if you look in the little text box does do the you thing, but it is all third person.
In Skyrim, I fudge with that. If I wanted to say you or I, like I'm getting cold.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
or
yeah.
Instead of you are
frost,
getting cold.
Frostfall, yeah.
Yeah. Some of the mods you can adjust which way it says it. I try to keep it consistent. Whatever most of them say, I try to make them all say it the same way because it stands out. If all of a sudden it's been telling me you, and then all of a sudden it says I need to eat food.
I think it's most important that individuals stick to one thing. So if two people are saying I and one person saying he, that's fine as long as the guy that's doing he doesn't switch between he, I, because then that gets confusing. It's like, wait a minute, is he talking about a different he when he says he? because he's using it, he's switching between it, and I mean that's just a writing principle too. If you start with one tense, you shouldn't all of a sudden go from future tense to present tense in the same sentence.
Was it like I think that I will be
Yeah,
running down the hallway or something?
like future perfect or something like that. I don't even know what tense that would be, but you get if you have to think
I
too
like
much
the term
about,
future. I have books on future perfect. It's a cool term. I don't think, is it a word? I don't even know.
it's a tense. It's to describe something that will be done, like an act that will be
Yeah. That's it.
completed in the future, but is not
That's
yet
it.
completed.
Yeah, all
I
those books from
think.
the 30s, 40s, and 50s on future perfect.
Ugh.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
None of them came true. None of them. There's no rocket pack, as far as I know.
Yeah.
There's no aerial planes that land on the freeways and turn into cars.
Yeah, I posted that one thing in the Discord the other day. What was it called? The Hiller VZ1 little floating platform.
Oh yeah. That's a future perfect thing. Yeah.
It turns out it's kind of a silly design.
I remember those the documentaries. They were testing those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember who was building them, but they were basically a propeller, like a hovercraft with a single propeller. They probably had problems keeping the thing from spinning, like a gyroscope.
Yeah, but also just the practicality of having a like an unprotected thing that you're just floating in the middle of the.
The Russians would just have anti-air weapons shooting at the guy.
First thing everybody sees, like, I think I'll shoot that guy instead. But yeah, no, I think really the only thing you absolutely should avoid is the you do X, you do Y as a GM, right?
Or you think. That's my least favorite.
Yeah, that's the worst. I will give you think a single pass in the one way I can stand it is if somebody is making some sort of knowledge roll or something and it's a 3D game, so they're not allowed to make stuff up on the spot. That's sort of a for example, I'm thinking about what I know about dragons to see if I know of any weak points this thing has. Then I'm okay with a or you think or you've read that X, Y, and Z about dragons, but because I'm asking effectively without asking, if that makes sense.
Well, how would you describe that without saying you, though?
I would basically just cut the you out and just say most books or most authors on dragons seem to agree that red dragons are, etc., whatever it is. They're immune to fire or they're particularly.
It's a hard habit to break.
Mm-hmm. It really is. Yeah,
listening to you say that, I'm thinking, oh, you've read in the past about dragons. And
I said that's why I give that one a pass because it's so natural. That one feels.
Your character has already read this book before, but say what the book is about.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of okay there, right? Because I'm kind of implicitly saying, hey, I don't know. Maybe we're playing in a predefined setting that I, Tyler, don't know much about. Maybe I don't know that dragons are, maybe it's weird. Maybe the red dragons breathe fire and they're weak to fire. That could be interesting.
Yeah, I like the unreliable narration.
Mm-hmm.
The book says yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But is what the book says true or is it made up stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Is it false information? That kind of thing.
If you rolled particularly poorly on your knowledge check, maybe you get something that's correct still, but it's you have that sort of mix.
Yeah, I've never had players that want to roll to see if what they read is true or not.
Yeah.
But in some games, that's one of your skills that you do all the time is to insight checks and stuff.
Know stuff. Yeah. Like the bardic knowledge.
I know things.
Yeah, I drink and I know things. It's an interesting character trait.
And there's idiot savants.
Yeah, that
idiot savants would know automatically if what
Mm,
they're looking at is real or not, right?
yeah.
They wouldn't have to ask or make a die roll, would they?
Mm.
I mean, they don't in Skyrim. They just know things. There's only one idiot savant. Not idiot savant. What are they called? Just savant.
Just
There's only
savant,
one
yeah.
savant in Skyrim, and that's Neloth.
Oh, yeah, someone who's naturally gifted at things. Yeah, I think that's really something where 4D, or at least, some degree of player co creation shines, is
Yeah.
playing a character like a savant. Because, when you're playing something like a sorcerer in Dungeons and Dragons, that's where you see the you and the question asking constantly. It's like, would my character know how this works? Is this, a thing that I understand? And then the GM, yes, you know that X, Y, and Z. It would be common knowledge that, actually, that would be a better way to phrase that. If, but
Yeah, my very first game that was 4D back in 1981, and I didn't know about 4D yet. I didn't know about role playing yet. But my character had this orb, and I'm trying to ask, how does the orb work? Without saying, how does the orb work? I'm trying to stay in character because I was told this is a role playing game, so I'm trying to role play in a D&D game. My character, who's got this orb. So I out of character, I asked the dungeon master, how do I do it? How do I say the thing? And he says, just say what you're doing. Okay, so I'm examining the orb, trying to decipher how it was last used. And then the dungeon master goes, poof, you're in the wizard's tower. He grabs the orb from your hand and he sends you down back where you came from. And I'm falling down to some bottomless pit from the top floor of the tower all the way to the dungeon somewhere, or the sewers. So I never got to figure out how it works, what it does, who the wizard was. He's like, oh, there it is. I'll have that. I'll take that. And then poof. I thought that was the coolest thing. The other players were like stunned because they were like, am I a character? Do this, Mother May I questions. I don't want to play that. I'd want to do something different. I didn't drive to some guy's house just to play Mother May I.
Yeah.
Because I saw kids in high school do that all the time with their D&D. It's like, nope, 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 nope. If I ever play the game, it's not going to be like that.
Yeah. And
but he didn't say you. He didn't say you do this, you do that. Basically, just says this happens. This happens to you. You can say bullets hit you.
Yeah, yeah. You can use you as a direct object.
And he says you are here basically. So you're saying what location you're at.
Yeah.
That's it. I still had agency.
Yeah. The only time other characters do stuff to you, but you aren't at the whims or mercies of the GM to, go. And even likewise, before I found this group on YouTube, the usual suspects, as you called us, with 4D and 3D, I played in a game where it was one of my friends. It was his first time GMing anything, but he did something that I was like, that's kind of annoying. Don't do that. in a kinder way than that, which was, I said something along the lines of, I was in a dark cave sneaking around. I had this squire who'd been kidnapped and my donkey killed while we were off somewhere. We returned back to camp to find him gone and the donkey dead. And so I'm going into this cave and I'm totally blind and I don't want to alert the people to my presence, so I don't light up a torch or anything, and I'm just feeling along the walls. Yeah. And I'm saying, like, I'm feeling along the walls and I'm trying to sneak up on them. I creep around the corner. And then he jumps like 3 steps ahead. Like, okay, so you're sneaking along the walls, and then around the corner's this. Should have stopped. and like, whoa, I just wanted to walk like 5 feet ahead. I didn't know what, you're getting me dug into way more than I asked for.
And as you're doing that,
Yeah, yeah.
that always
That
bugs me.
that one's so easy to do too. I have to stop myself from doing it. As that happens, dot dot dot. It's just filler language. It's just nothing, you know.
I usually make a sound effect and say, the airlock opens. The airlock on deck 7 just opened. Something like that. Instead of, as you guys are doing
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
this is happening.
Yep.
I'm trying to think if there's other words that should be removed from the game besides you.
Mm.
I mean, still keep it, but just don't use it
Don't
every
use it
time
as
you
second
start a
person.
sentence.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Well, and don't use it as a means to repeat back to the player what they just said they were doing, or to make the player do something with their character that they didn't say they were doing. Unless, I'd say the one situation where you can do that one is if they're like mind controlled, or you know, they're not of their own body or something like that.
Do you ever ask a player what they're doing after asking another player what they're doing? Like you're doing like a survey of the area, of the room, asking all the players what they're currently doing now. Instead of saying, what are you guys doing? You go to each one and say, what are you doing? And they say, I'm cracking a safe. And then you say, okay, well, he's cracking the safe. Okay, now what are you doing? And you're just repeating everything they say. And then once you get everybody to say what they do, then you go and you reiterate or summarize. Okay, now he's over here cracking the safe. He's hacking the computer. She's using the torch on some electrical whatever. And this guy's armed and ready for invasion from the whatever.
So you're almost like live storyboarding. Like everyone's adding a thing to what they're doing.
You're the guy drawing the picture.
Reads, yeah, the GM reads.
You're the guy
off
drawing
what
the picture of the scene, the frame.
I don't
Yeah.
know that I would call that role playing, but that could.
And
be
you want to know where
interesting.
everyone is in the camera shot.
Yeah, No, I haven't ever done that. The only I have
never
been
done it either.
tempted when a player's silent for some period of time, because I do have the occasional player that will, I'll notice, I'm like, this person hasn't said anything in 5 minutes other than they're following what other players are doing. I do occasionally have the temptation to go, okay, what are you doing? You're being a background character right now. What?
Yeah, I just do round robin at the beginning of a session just to get the players in the groove.
And there's such an easy way to fix it, because I was racking my brain over it the other night when I had a session where I was like, I was going in round robin, and then I ended up skipping a character because they weren't saying anything. And I was like, and I came back around to them and I was like, oh, duh, I can just have a character that's here ask them, hey, what are you doing? You're just standing around. Here, throw something. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say you as a player,
Yeah.
but in dialogue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You hold this rope,
And that's
tie it around something.
And that's, I think, the easiest thing that I don't really get how people miss, is that it's like, just do stuff through dialogue, right? You brought up in a recent video, I can't remember which one, the
Dialogue solves everything.
Well, the shopping scenes, where people are going to shop for stuff and they're not really talking to the merchant, they're talking to the GM who's looking at prices and stuff. I'm like, well, why don't you just have the merchant, open a cat, how much is it? And one of the characters asks how much is a sword, or maybe one of the players asks how much is a sword. Just assume they said that as their character.
Yeah, just dialogue.
Yeah, and then the merchant opens up his book and is like, I don't know, the going rate for that sword's about 5 gold. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, a character finds a sword on a display rack, and he grabs it and he yells out across the store, "How much is this?"
Don't touch that.
Instead
Not
of
for
everyone
sale.
just instead of everyone just standing outside on the main drag
No.
having a
And that can,
conversation with the GM
and that
without
can
going
actually
anywhere.
be an excuse to be able to open a book as the GM. It's been like, well, this guy's looking in his catalog for what the prices are, so I'm gonna look in the catalog for what the prices are.
Yeah, that'd be an excuse to open up the rule book.
Yeah.
Let me see here. They start doing this,
Yeah.
Give me swords. Oh, here we are, swords. You know, 17 gold.
Joe down the street selling it for 15. Instead of GM in my book, it says they're only 15 gold.
Buy it now, or it's going to be 20 gold.
um,
I don't know how
or
much swords cost. In Skyrim, it varies depending on what potion you happen to drink.
yeah, but it also might tell you something about the world if it is a world like Skyrim where you go to the general goods seller and they really do mean general goods and you've got everything from magical crystals to
Oh
feed
yeah,
to whereas if you went to a more grounded general goods store they'd go a sword, why are you down the street that way, I don't know why you're here.
yeah. If the general guy has a sword, I would expect it to be a dress sword or an antique or a display item only.
Something pawned.
Yeah, it's like no one knows what it's even from.
Yeah, it's
Could
like,
be
oh,
enchanted, might
I've
not
had that
be.
in the back for years, here you go.
I think it's weird when I go someplace and they only have staves for sale. It's like, what?
How do you make a living off of that?
I'm not even a stav user. As soon as I pick one up, I give it to Lydia, and if she uses it, fine.
God, that's another thing that irks me about that game is how everyone just knows how to use them. It's a character that
Well, if they know how to use it, it'll never wear out of batteries.
yeah, that
But
too.
if Lydia's using it, it's going to lose its charge pretty quick. That's a skill, I guess. I don't know what. Oh, that's a perk. That's a
Yeah,
perk
yeah,
in
it's one of the
Skyrim.
enchanting perks. They bundled it with
So I
that.
don't think she has anything on that perk tree.
Well,
She's just brutal user, end user. She
I,
shoots it at everything.
I think sometimes where some of the repeating I swing my sword at it, you swing your sword at it, and is almost comes from like a, are you sure you want to do that? Like just to be clear that I understand what you're doing. You swing your sword at it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
one of
there's a plethora of ways to reiterate what the player just said.
mm,
Yeah, sometimes it's what you said where, are you sure you want to do that?
yeah.
Is that your final answer? I see that all the time on YouTube. Or sometimes they just don't speak clearly enough, or it took them too long to say their
Mm,
answer, so the GM is just summarizing what their turn is.
yeah. Yeah, it can also be a time, like a time filler, like nothing's going on. So, or somebody's looking up something in a chart or a table, and so they're just stretching. You swing your sword at them, and you're trying to figure out like what happens when they swing their sword at them because you don't know the mechanics very well or something like that. But there's better ways to fill that, instead of just repeating exactly what they were doing, describing what that one character or another's doing.
Well, this is probably a whole different problem with the
Yeah,
games.
that's true.
But what is it called when the GM asks for a role and then tries to figure out what the role was being asked for?
Oh man,
Don't you hate that one?
putting the cart before the horse. I don't know. I'll do that sometimes if I'm sort of stuck and can't come up with a push. I'll roll. I won't ask for anything, and then I'll think, what did I roll that for? I didn't roll that for any reason. There's no, and then I'll just move on with life. And my players can think, they can think that was a roll for something, or they can probably realize that I just went, I have no idea why I just rolled that. I just needed to see the number 7 appear, and then that told me something.
Or they'll make a roll. They'll say, everyone make a perception roll. So everyone's trying, while everyone's looking for dice to roll. I don't know why it takes forever to roll dice on these games,
Yeah,
but it does.
in a D20
10
system
minutes
where it's
later, 10 minutes later, they've all got their dice rolled out, and then he's like, okay, so what happens to you? What you guys see? Okay, this is what happens, and he's still trying to think of something for why
yeah,
they
because
rolled.
he doesn't know why he's asked for a perception roll. It's just a thing that people do. So
Yeah, he didn't have an encounter planned out.
it's because people have learned role playing games sort of like learning martial arts through Tai Chi. What I
Is
mean
that
by
doable?
maybe, but what I
Tai
mean by
Chi
that
is
is
the
they
one where you just stand there and you
yeah,
let everyone
it's just
else
one
just
person
go.
and they see all the flowy movements. It's
Yeah,
it's they've picked up that like okay, so DMs sometimes what you do is you ask players what you're gonna do, and then sometimes a dragon shows up, and then you make perception checks all the time, and then you make attack rolls because nobody reads the books. Nobody actually reads the books. Nobody owns the books, as Wizards of the Coast is complaining about.
well, they had to have sold books, right?
They do, but they complain that only GMs buy books, and then
I
when
see, I see.
and so players are confused about what rules do what, and then when those players go on to run a game because their GM left or moved or stopped playing, they don't have
Aren't
any
the
of the books,
rules
so
on the website anyway?
they just kind of yeah, but
The D&D Beyond or whatever it was called.
they are, but people don't read them. I can't tell you how many players I've had. I gave up trying to play 5e because as a plague, it was just your character does pretty much the same thing in every combat. You need to roll a d20 to do it. And I would have the same player, in a game ask, "What do I roll again?" It's like, oh my god, you've read the thing. I've read it with you. I've printed out the sheet so you can refer to it on your own, and it hasn't changed. Nothing's changed. Why do you still need to be reminded that you roll a d20 in the d20 game? I don't understand. Why are you even here? And that's not one person. I've had that issue with like multiple people that just or with trying to get people to play games that aren't 5e. The number one thing I get is, "Oh, I don't want to learn new rules. I don't want to read it." And it's like this aversion to reading in a hobby that is primarily the written language is very strange to me.
When I was a kid, you didn't get to read the books much because the dungeon master thought you were going to read the spoiler section.
Oh yeah, Hackmaster makes fun of that. They make you like print out and sign a judge's form. It's like I'm a judge and I will not disclose the judge's secrets to.
Is that for real?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Hackmaster's a parody system, so
Oh, that's right. That's right.
yeah,
You said Hackmaster. I'm thinking Rollmaster.
yeah, yep,
Rollmaster version 10.
yeah.
So, what do you think about the GM saying you and describing everything your character's doing? And now it's your turn, and they say, "What do you do?" And this has happened to me a few times in the past, so I stopped even hanging out with this whole industry for
Mm,
decades. And that's when the GM says, "What do you do?" And I'm thinking, well, you already told me what my character's doing.
I'm
And
one
I
of
wasn't even imagining my character doing any of
yeah,
that stuff.
yeah.
So now I have my train of thought is gone. And now I have to go on what you say my character did, what I'm going to do next.
I think
So,
there's three things built into this. The first is I'm either confused because you've said everything my character's doing, but you haven't described they do this all the time where you've said everything my character does, you cut the goblin's head off and then it goes sailing off, and then you block this arrow from the other goblin, and then you kill him too, and now what do you do? And I'm like, You've just told me stuff that I did. You haven't told me. I don't know what's going on in the world. Are there any goblins? And that's how you get the question asking, is because
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if there's any other goblins alive. I don't know if is
Yeah.
there still
I
danger?
wiped the
Has
blood off my
Yeah, I'm
sword.
like
And the
I don't
GM's like, you, and as you're wiping the blood off your sword, another troll comes up behind you, and you're hitting it, and you're chopping its head off. Poof. What do you
yeah.
do now?
Yeah, I'm either confused in one circumstance because I've been given too much information on what I'm doing, and not enough information about what the world and the NPCs are doing, or I'm going, well, you didn't need to ask me that because I was just about to tell you what I was gonna do, man.
Yeah,
That half the time it happens, I just get interrupted. I haven't had this happen in a couple of years. Again, it was a friend of mine who was a new GM. I think he only did it twice or so, but he started to say, "What do you?" And I was already saying what I was doing, and I was like, "Ah, curse you!" But you're new, so I'll let it slide. And I don't think he ever did it again. So that was good. And then the third issue, I think, is that I think this is where you get the giant 10, 20 page backstories because players can't roleplay their characters when they're actually there. So they have to create a backstory where they're at least kind of allowed to have a character to themselves.
yeah. They have to front load the
Yeah.
game somehow.
They have to like tell the GM, okay, since you're gonna roleplay with my character, here's his portfolio, here's how he would behave. Since you're gonna do it all for me.
That makes sense.
I don't
I've
think
never
that's
heard that before, but what you just said makes sense
I
to me.
don't think it's intentional, but I think it's probably like
The
a trained behavior.
subconscious,
Yeah.
something in the back of the player's head. I need to write down something
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise he's going to be doing it all wrong when he says what my character
Yeah.
does.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe I've never been one to write
So
huge
here's my
backstories.
backstory. So I'm front loading the answers to every time I get asked, "What do you do?"
Yeah.
Here it is. Here's my
Yep.
list of answers.
Yep. I mean, even Burning Wheel has that. What is it? Instinct mechanic, which is like in given situation, in like a stressful situation where you couldn't normally act, your character does, and you have like a sentence or something like that.
Yeah, no, that one you kind of not argue, but you describe your intentions, the other
Mm-hmm.
person describes their intentions, and what you're hoping for, what your goals are, blah blah blah. You even say what your goals are
Mm-hmm.
during your turn. Then you roll to see if any of that happens or not, using some other stuff as a modifier to the roll. So it's all every time it's a turn, everyone talks out of character,
Yeah.
arguing for why they should win the death match in the
Yeah.
arena.
Yeah, it plays more like an old war game, not like a board game war game, but like a the origins of war games with World War One, where you've got guys standing around, and then an officer goes, "This man wouldn't have been shot because he has he's got these sandbags here, and he would have been fine. That guy couldn't take that shot cleanly." And then the other officers are going, "No, he's a really good shot. He would definitely be able to take your guy's head
Yeah,
off in the time that he sprinted over there."
that's how I played Army when I was like 10 years old.
Yep.
He's got this army man is behind some rubble
Mm-hmm.
of a house. Like when the what is it, the Italian guys, not the Italian guys, but these guys from Italy or whatever, they're bombarding the 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 church or something up on this hill where these Nazis were all hiding.
Oh, Monte Cassino.
Yeah. They spent like days just bombarding that place.
Yeah.
And then it made it tougher for the troops to go up the hill to kill him because all the Nazis had hiding places. So it was even tougher for the guys to, instead of just running into a building and shooting everybody, it was all rubble. It was a mess. And even the Nazis even had more uh, line of sight with everybody. They can see in any direction. Whereas before, the building didn't have windows everywhere. It just stretched out further. Stalingrad probably had the same problem.
Yeah, that's another thing that gets used in. Now, if you do that, you'll, etc.
But usually you threw marbles at the army man, or your little sister just ran across the room and stepped on everybody. That counted as a kill. Godzilla enters the arena.
In the actual ones, they would drop bags of flour out of the planes, and if you got covered in flour, you were bombed. You were a casualty.
Okay. Nothing like standing out in the open waiting for a plane to drop stuff on you. Paint. Drop some paint on you.
Oh, yeah. But yeah.
But the second person thing, when did that start? I mean, Gary Gygax, when he role played, he never role played, but when he ran games, he would say you. And I want to say in his examples, in the books he wrote, that's how the players talked. That's how the dungeon master talked.
Maybe it might have come from Choose Your Own Adventure novels. They use you all the time.
Yeah, but when did those books come out?
That's what I was trying to think. If I don't know if this is a chicken
19,
or an egg
were they?
scenario.
Did they come out in the 70s?
I don't know. I'm doing research. Dungeons and Dragons was first by a couple of years. 79.
What do you think of somebody reading one of those books to his friends and then having his friends roll dice to see what page he reads next? Is that a game? There are people that do this on YouTube.
I'm going to give you an academic answer, and then I'll give you my own answer, which is I forget his first name, Jules' model of what a game is, which is it has to be done for fun. That has to be the at least an implicit goal. It has to have a victory condition. It has to have a failure condition. And it has to have controls. This is missing that last part. There are no controls, really. The players have very, very limited options in how they interact.
You could choose to investigate,
Yeah.
run, or attack. Do neither.
Yeah.
Wait to die.
And at the end of the day, they are beholden to the results of the die anyways. Because, I mean, if there's 6 options and you roll a d6, wow, that's just totally random, especially if they have...
that drives me to drink.
Yeah.
If
It's
each
like the
answer has
random-
an equal percentage to
I
happen.
mean, the random encounter tables that aren't weighted at all, so you're in the middle of town and you're equally as likely to find a guardsman around the corner and a dragon that's somehow
werewolf
shoved into the alleyway. It's...
Is that Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde? Let's flip a coin, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's sort of in the same way that you can... A really good illustration as to why this sorts of discussions of is it a game, isn't it, don't really matter, is that tic-tac-toe meets all of the definitions of a game, and it's a pretty crappy game. Because as soon as you know how it functions, you can never lose. And if both people know how it functions, you can draw 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So it's technically a game, sure, but it's not a particularly good one.
If you think if you think 2 moves ahead, you'll lose. Because that's not how the game works. You're just constantly blocking someone else.
Yeah. Your goal is to just be as obnoxious as possible, and that's
Right.
that's kind of how people run tabletop RPGs. It seems like
Some kid would say, "Well, whoever starts first usually wins."
Yeah, you have a slight advantage. If you go first and you know how to play tic-tac-toe, you will never lose. You won't always win, but you will never lose.
And there's that game where you have like 20, was it 23 matches, and you can take one match, two match, or three matches away. But whoever removes the
Oh,
last match loses.
yeah, and then
Those
there's
kinds of
some,
games.
yeah, and
The
it's
computers always win.
yeah, and they just boil down to statistical puzzles, and if you can
Yeah.
figure out, if you can figure out a single math formula, you can go, oh, I know how to always beat this. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, it's this number, is this left? I take this many.
yeah.
But what do you think about, okay, the guy you mentioned that says what a game
Hmm.
is he a YouTuber?
No, he's an
Because there's a YouTuber that talks about what a game is, and he's actually working. He says he's making a game that's actually going to be an actual game, like the first game ever made. And he has all these reasons for why games we play aren't games.
Jesper Jewel. He teaches at the Danish Design School.
Oh, okay. Maybe they think the same way. It's like, what about poker? That's a game? And they'll say no. Because the game has to meet these certain criterias. Whoever invented the criterias back in 1397. I don't remember if they said chess is a game or not.
Um, it should be. It's both players have controls. There's a win condition. There's a failure condition, and I guess it depends on if you're playing it for fun because historically they may have been playing it for uh, strategic purposes. The
Yeah,
edutainment
if I win, I get
sort of thing.
your wife, I get your concubines and your country.
Mm. But yeah, the Jewel has a really interesting book called The Art of Failure,
Oh,
which
I've heard of that.
is uh, he describes the paradox of people continuing to come back to play games that actually disappoint them and they don't enjoy very much.
Yeah,
I'm reminded of that when I see people coming back to play the same campaign over and over again, and every time they've got this sort of expression.
I always hated
Huh?
Parcheesi or Sorry.
Oh, what do I need to roll? Oh, and they're searching around for their die, and it's like, and you've been here for how long? This is session 28.
I don't know how to explain that one, but yeah, every game I've ever seen where the players are asked to roll dice, except for the 4D players,
Hmm.
it takes them forever to roll a stupid die.
Well, they're like scanning through the. I don't know. I'm somewhat guilty of this because I'll be looking for
But it's like
you know.
they roll every time it's their turn. Now,
Yeah, it's like,
here's the weird part.
how did you misplace the one you just rolled?
It may have, 40 or 50 minutes may have gone by before this guy got a turn. So maybe that's what's
Yeah.
the problem.
Yeah, he's forgotten he was playing a game. Yeah.
In the games I run, the players get a turn like every 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
No one's sitting around for 40 minutes doing nothing. That's called an audience member.
Mhm.
But I see modern players, we're in the 21st century, first quarter of it, grown men letting the GM talk and talk and talk and talk. And the player's like, but, and then the GM's like, don't interrupt me. Talk and talk. Okay, what is it you want to do? I want to attack with my +3 sword. Make a roll. You fail. Good day, sir. Good day.
Well, it's always the I always just refer people to the scene in Conan the Destroyer, where
What happens there?
the sorcerer's coming out. He's doing his like hand signals, and he starts talking, and then does a monologue, and then
Oh, is that where Conan kills him or
Conan's
something?
pacing, and he just says "enough talk" and throws a dagger at one of his guards. That's what I'm thinking every time a GM starts, monologuing, either as a character or he's describing too much.
Well, the
there's that
GM wants you to hear about the story he wrote.
yeah, well, and I made a video a while ago about how disappointed I am by I don't like the Powered by the Apocalypse design philosophy because they one of the
Which
designers wrote
part?
well, one of the designers wrote a blog article that was like, well, they made a really stupid example, and I was focused too much on how bad the example was, but they were like, if you give your players a magic item that allows them to pass through walls of a certain color, now you have to design every room knowing what color the walls are going to be. And now you have to describe in painstaking detail the colors of the wallpaper. I was like, what? That's a terrible example, but two, no, it just doesn't matter that much.
Yeah,
And it
watch
would
this
get
paint dry and tell me if it changed
yeah,
color
it
at
would
all
get
while it dried.
really old after a while, and then you would get into the stupid fights of like, well, I bring around a bucket of paint and I paint the walls green because I can go through green walls.
So
It's
when you
just
roll high, when you succeed at a roll, you get to then say what that looks like to the other players. Like
oh
if you're
yeah
you're
the
attacking somebody, you get a
yeah
critical hit, the
yeah
guy dies, and you get to
yeah
explain, you
yeah.
get to describe how your
Describe what
character
that
kills the
looks
guy.
like. I believe is how the book tells you to do it.
And then it's got that other weird thing, right, where uh you're the GM's telling you to roll something and you can say, well, my character went to college and he knows things,
Yeah,
so he would know how to he has modifiers he can add to this
yeah,
roll to make the
mm,
roll better.
yeah.
So you can almost retcon on the fly
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you're
or
kind
come
of
up
being
with an
like,
excuse for why
it's
you're good at something.
yeah, it's all but saying, GM, that's dumb. You shouldn't have me roll for that.
There's another one. Was it Blades in the Dark or something like that? Or
Oh, I do not like Blades in the Dark core. Blades in the I kept getting told when I couldn't find any players for Shadowrun because the system is clunky and complicated and nobody wants to read that one because it's edited terribly, which is fair. But people were like, "Oh, just run Blades in the Dark," and I was like, oh, "Okay." I was like, "Well, the flavor is kind of similar, but the game mechanics are just like you do something and then if you don't like the results, you can spend points to go back, make your failure a success, and then the GM has to re-describe the scene as a
yeah,
success now. It's just like
yeah,
that's so weird. And now and every other player is now having to think like, wait, which of these just happened? And everybody's having to pay very close attention, and so you can't think ahead what you want to do on your turn. So it
right,
just makes everything feel very slow and clunky,
yeah,
and you have to think, do I like that result? Is it worth spending a point to retcon that, or can I live without a hand? You know, for yeah, it just feels very weird, and it doesn't.
I want a better result. So
You know,
here's some beads.
almost yeah, and almost the way that you would have to play it is that you would have to play characters that can see these short glimpses into the future. Because if you're not, then what is this mechanic representing? I'm fine with weird sort of gaming mechanics as long as they're representing something in the world. But this mechanic just seems to be a thing.
Yeah. So what was the other topic we were talking about earlier before we went live?
Before we went live.
In my Skyrim stream, I was talking to you and you were chatting.
Um,
Was there something you said that we should cover?
oh, I don't know. I mean, we can cover more of it, but I made a video on revolvers, which was really using revolvers as a specific example of when the game's mechanics don't tell you everything about an item, and sort of the people saying you look at, oh, why would I ever use a revolver when a semi-auto pistol, it holds more, it does, all of these great things, it reloads faster, it's got the same accuracy, and oh, well, I'll just never pick the revolver. And it's like, well, because there's a lot of things that a revolver does that aren't on the stat sheet.
Maybe the revolver will shoot the bullets that you have in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the tech level of the world you're on only has revolvers. But let's say the game only has the revolver as a ranged weapon. What are the most important things you need to know about that weapon to use it, do you think?
Let's see.
When narrating how you use it.
Knowing how to load it helps. Most people don't know how to reload.
So how fast you load it?
Yeah, that also. Because most people, when they go to reload a revolver, they act like they've got two left hands, and they'll push forward on the unloading gate, and then they'll think like, well, how am I supposed to like open it this way, and then dump the rounds this way, and then they'll put one in. Well, actually, they usually won't even do this. They'll keep the revolver in their main hand, and then they'll try to load with their left hand, and that that never goes well. And then you're dropping rounds and then picking them up off the floor. So that's pretty helpful, is knowing to keep here, unload and transfer to your offhand, and then as you're dumping your spent shells, you're already grabbing your new ones and loading them in.
So it all comes down to how long it takes you to reload the gun.
Yeah, that's important. Also knowing, again, how to aim. That's true.
But you're not going to roll. You're not going to roll to see how long it takes you to load the gun, are you?
No, I would have it be like a fixed skill. Some people are faster than others, and they just are.
So you'll say, my character's loading his gun. And then I say, well, and as Flame Zombie 1 is loading his gun, Mr. Max, what are you doing?
Well, like Shadowrun, for example, has a reload speed. Like, you can spend an action to load one round in, for example.
Reloading.
Yeah. And so then you just say, I know that's what you spent your action doing. You reloaded one round.
In Left 4 Dead, the girl just says reloading, and you just assume she's reloading.
Yeah.
You hear her doing something.
Oh, another important thing would be knowing whether or not your gun is double action or single action. Which is to say, if it's single action only, you have to cock the hammer every time. And if it's double action, you can just pull the trigger.
If it's not double action, does the trigger move?
Yes.
No, I mean, if you don't do what you did just now, can you? And it's only single action.
Oh,
can you pull the trigger?
No.
It's locked, or
it would either be locked or it would be
really hard.
Some rare ones, it would just be really mushy because it wouldn't be connected to anything yet.
Oh, okay.
Pull it and it would just like hit the back.
Gotcha.
Be like hitting if you've ever pressed the brakes in a car with a dead brake cylinder and the brakes just sort of slam to the floor.
Yeah.
But no, on most, you'll even have some old revolvers with shrouded hammers, or shrouded triggers, I mean, which is where the trigger doesn't even show up until you pull the hammer and then the trigger pops out.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the safety mechanism on them.
Now, are you going to focus on aiming? Or what do you focus on the most? Aiming, loading, aiming, shooting? What?
I guess that depends on, if you're out of ammo and you're focusing on aiming, you're probably doing something wrong there. But, so I would say that's context-based. But, that's another neat thing about a revolver. If you've got the time and you've shot 2 rounds, then you can just pop it open and start topping up. Whereas if you got a semi-auto, I mean, you'd have to dump the whole magazine. And then, yeah, you can pick the magazine up and start jamming rounds in, but that's a mess. And, in movies and video games, the magazines just always magically have exactly how much ammo they need to have in them.
Yeah,
So,
that's when if I'm role playing a gun user, I'm just picking a cool scene from a movie that I remember, and I just briefly describe what my character is doing right then. But I don't get into all detail.
yeah,
I don't mention the safety. I
yeah.
don't mention if the gun's clean.
Ooh,
I don't mention. In my social contracts, sometimes we decide if we're counting bullets or not.
you should know if your revolver is safe to drop, because a lot of old revolvers were not. If you dropped them and it landed on the hammer, it would shoot.
That
Modern
makes sense.
modern revolvers though typically aren't, as you have this little transfer bar in there that gets out of the way of the
Oh yeah,
firing
yeah, yeah,
pin once
yeah,
it's pulled back, but once it's sitting there, the firing pin's hidden.
yeah.
So what a lot of guys used to do back in the 1800s is
Otherwise, you just go do 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 do
they would
do.
just leave one empty. Fanning the hammer is not a historical technique. That was invented by spaghetti westerns, actually, which is kind of funny. Yeah.
It's the best way to do it.
Yep. But yeah, no, it was basically just to illustrate that there's there's advantages and disadvantages to something that it's not a mechanic. It doesn't. We're not gonna have a. If you wrote out every single bit we just talked about, which is not an exhaustive list on revolvers, you'd have one gun in the game that take up a whole page. It'd be how are you gonna fit that on your character sheet?
Guns have service manuals.
Yeah, they do.
So
Mine's
how
not.
would you?
Not very
Okay, like
detailed.
if I always have guns in my games. So
Mm-hmm.
the only thing I care about
Mm-hmm.
is the range. How far away is the person you're shooting, and can the gun shoot that far?
Mm-hmm.
Or the guy has a rifle and he wants to shoot someone who is super close to him. Not going to work. You're not going to stick a rifle in his back.
Oh,
Don't move, because the guy is already, he's already grabbing one of your hands probably.
yeah, yeah,
Where's that? That's personal range. There's
yeah. Hand
close
to
range,
hand.
personal range, medium range, long range, far range. I expect the player, if a player has a gun, I expect them to know how far it shoots.
Yeah, like in World War One, guys were using clubs and trench shovels and stuff like that instead of their guns because you got this big long bolt action rifle in a trench. You can't. You're trying to maneuver it over here like this. Meanwhile, the guy with the club's already on you trying to beat you to death.
Yeah.
Or guy that's got a little pistol like this that's really handy. But if I'm trying to shoot somebody, 50 yards away, I could do it with this, but it'd be a lot trickier than with a rifle, obviously.
Yeah. The let's say a player in your game has a gun, they're shooting the gun, they roll to see if they hit the guy.
Hmm.
You as the GM, how do you describe the result of their firing action without saying you or your? I guess you could say your bullet,
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, um, I guess it
or it's
depends
just
on
say the bullet from your gun, something, I don't know.
whether or not they succeed and how much they succeed. But let's say they succeed at shooting the guy. Say the bullet rips through the air and tears through the target and leaves a blood splatter behind them on the counter. They stumble down and they're tumbling, and then whoever goes next.
That's a good way to do it. So you see the bullet come out of the end of your gun, and you watch it as it goes into the guy's head. Some GMs want you to feel everything in the game.
Yeah, yeah, and I can get some of that. I think that style of using you is well intentioned. It is trying to make it more immersive, but it's like let me decide if my
You,
character sees that or not.
you flinch as you fire the gun, and
Yeah,
you see the bullet turn the
And
guy's head into
and
mush,
like
and you
there's a
and you 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 cringe at the sight of it.
yeah, yeah.
And there's
And there's an easier way to do that, the make it the inanimate things that are acting upon the character,
yeah,
the character, I shoot my gun at him, the recoil pulses through your hands or forces your wrist to jerk upwards, because that's a thing you can't really control, right? The recoil from the gun.
yeah,
Instead
yeah.
of
In
saying,
Traveler,
you
there's a
know,
little trait or a stat for
yeah,
each weapon, and it tells you if
yeah,
it's recoilless or not.
yeah, yeah,
It's just something to role play, is all.
yeah, yeah.
Or it lets you know you have to re-aim after each shot or something,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think
or it just takes more time
yeah,
between shots.
Shadowrun has the same thing. I never pay a ton of attention to it because it's like, well, Shadowrun's it's way too clunky with it. It's like, well, after this gun will start to have recoil after you fired 7 shots and its burst is 3, so you can fire 2 bursts without suffering recoil penalties, and then on the third burst, now you're starting to suffer recoil too, but you can fire 2 bursts in a single shot and have no recoil penalties, then wait, then start shooting again. I just used it as like, well, if this gun has a big number, it's got very little recoil, don't worry about it. This gun's got a very small number, okay, you're gonna have to wait between shots or your gun's gonna be pointing at the ceiling.
Yeah, well, yeah, guns, anything the character does, I always base it on how long does it take to happen in a movie. Like
Yeah, yeah,
how many minutes in the movie are spent doing this thing?
yeah, yeah. And which movie? What movie? That's it's also what's the tone? Is it oh, I'm trying to think of John Wick has fairly realistic gunplay. That's going to be a little different than I'm trying to think of a movie that has some.
For a lot of, I haven't seen any of his movies, but I can imagine him shooting like 5 guys dead within a second or two.
Yeah, it's usually slower and more the scenes are fairly fast paced, but the fights last a while. People can get shot and stand back up, um, or or he gets shot all the time and stands back up because he's wearing so much body armor. All this futuristic, ceramic plate, layered body armor.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's lots of people getting shot and then stumbling to the ground and then staggering back up and drawing their pistols and then missing a bunch and then he ties up with them and
Because if it's a bunch of guys against one person, I would have the player make a roll, and however he succeeds or fails, uh, how should I say this? Let's say there's 5 guys in the room. He wants the player's intention or whatever is to shoot these 5 guys all at once, really quick. I would just have one die roll, and if he super succeeds at the roll, then he shoots all 5 guys in the between the eyes, super fast,
yeah,
rapid fire with his pistol,
yeah, because
just to save time.
well, and uh,
Because the
with
guys he's shooting are just minions anyway.
and when it's done the other way, you have to come up with 5 new ways to describe the same thing happening.
Yep.
And that can be tricky. It can be done, but it can be tricky.
And I'm not going
Be-
to have players sitting around waiting for this guy to do rolls for each one.
yeah, and I don't think necessarily. Mm, I think you can role play John Wick. I think that could be interesting, but
Good. You could.
yeah, but I think
I haven't
that
seen the movie, but I'm pretty sure you
yeah,
could. If it's a
but
movie, you can role play it.
yeah, I think that's true. But just like tic tac toe is a game, a lot of the enjoyment from John Wick comes from watching the really good choreography. So unless you're very good at describing interesting scenes with, martial arts, gunfighting, stuff like that, I think it could get very. And I mean, listen to the way people describe combat in games that are 90% combat. It's you hit the guy, you don't hit the guy. You're.
Well, I know the players that can describe choreography
Mm.
actually know choreography.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they've danced. They've
Oh,
they've had dance lessons.
I've forgotten his name.
But if
He's
it's a
the
guy who just sits on a couch and watches anime cartoons all day, I don't know. I don't know if he can explain anything. He
yeah,
might say, I do like that scene in such and such Samurai 17 season 6 when the guy does the thing and everyone's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, go ahead and roll. Great role play there.
yeah.
No, but someone who actually uh, does kickboxing or some sort of exercise activity,
Mhm.
track and field even. Who knows? They know how fast a human being runs because they've ran fast. They can describe pretty well what their character does running without saying, I'm like Tom Cruise when he's chasing after the CIA truck that's trying to get away with his wife.
Yeah.
And he's running super fast. He's going 60 miles per hour behind this car and he catches up with it. And he's not even out of breath. And a helicopter's chasing him too. And his shoes, he has dress shoes on that he's able to run in. Okay. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be cinematic like the movie. It just needs, the timing needs to be like the movie.
Yeah. And you don't need to know, you don't need to be able to do that stuff yourself. You need to know how it would be done, or at least what it would look like, right?
Well, you have to see it in your head.
Yeah, yeah.
All my
Like if you
players, I asked them before we even start a game, I asked them, how do you imaginate?
Yeah,
And if they can't, if they see the world as words and they have to read the words in their mind before they speak, you're out. You're out. I want to hear what their favorite movie is and if they can imagine themselves in that scene. Not just an audience watching the film,
Mhm.
but they're actually in this, they're out of camera frame in that scene.
Yeah.
If they
I
can
need
put themselves in there.
You remind me I need to film a video that I've been thinking about for a while, especially with Black Lodge Games saying, RPGs are like soap operas. I've thought, no, RPGs are really,
Haven't we?
they're,
I know I've done that with Mr. Max.
uh,
You haven't done one
I
yet?
haven't touched that yet. I've been, I know I'm probably going to touch it, a year
You
late.
understand what they meant by soap
I,
opera though?
I understand what they meant by it, but I'm taking it disingenuously. I'm going to take it literally, but not really as a response to them, but as a response in general. That role playing is more like sparring than anything else because there's the back and forth aspect. All of these other mediums that we compare it to, movies, soap operas, books, what have you, they're one way mediums. And that's where the comparison always falls flat is that you've got someone writing the stuff and then the audience just sits there and takes it. Whereas if you're sparring, it's not entirely antagonistic because it's not a real fight. The GM's job isn't to just try to kill you all the time, but you present a threat, they respond, now they present a threat, you respond, and it's back and forth and back and forth.
How long does a sparring match last for?
Depends. Um, Sometimes I do no time limits. Sometimes,
Would you ever compare role play with wrestling? Like
yeah.
Hulk Hogan style wrestling?
Oh, like professional wrestling. Yeah, yeah,
Because some of that's scripted.
yeah. Some of it's scripted, but a lot of times it's scripted in the way of before we go out to the ring, we both talked and we're like, okay, here's what's gonna happen. They've had the session zero, so to speak, of like,
Yeah.
okay, and I'm gonna
Well,
do
they
this, you're
rehearse.
gonna do that, and then when they actually get out of there, Hulk Hogan was infamous for this. What they would say backstage would be like, okay, Hulk, you're gonna look really good, you're gonna hit the atomic leg drop a couple of times, but then Macho Man's gonna come out on top and he's gonna take it. And then halfway through the match, Hulk Hogan would actually start fighting because he didn't want to lose. And so it would start scripted, but eventually by the end of it, it's turned into an actual an actual brawl.
Well, that's weird.
Yeah, It's called a shoot match. Is you would have a worked or a fixed match, and you would have a shoot match, which is where the guy
Oh,
shoots on
okay.
them. Yeah. And Japan turned this into shuto or shoot boxing, which is like an early form of MMA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you don't like the movie idea? I like using movies.
No, I do. I just I'm just proposing a third answer. A
Now, when
third.
I say I compare RPGs to movies, usually most of the time I'm just comparing the pacing of the game should be like the film.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want
Like how long did Darth Vader's fight scene
Yeah, yeah.
with so and so last? Either too
Likewise, if
long or too short.
yeah, in sparring, if I'm in an actual fight for my life, I don't care if it's boring. I'm trying to live, right? But in sparring, if both of us are very defensive and we're just kind of staring at each other, I'm like, okay, what's going on? And usually the coach will be like, okay, make something happen here, or in an MMA fight, that's an actual fight, but the fighters, you can't run away. That's a foul, and in I think pretty much every combat sport is you can't run away. You're there to do something entertaining, right? This
Yeah.
is sort of the same in a tabletop RPG, right? You may not do the thing that makes the most sense. You're doing the thing that's going to be entertaining and make some degree of sense, right?
In the RPG,
Yeah.
yeah, you want to have an interesting character that's got quirks,
Mm-hmm.
secrets, goals, motives, all that stuff. Now, your character has to do interesting things as well.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully the other players brought interesting characters.
Yeah.
So when these characters encounter each other, interesting things will just happen.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to think, okay, what should we roleplay that sounds interesting?
Yeah.
If you're just in character, it automatically happens.
And you have it's just like you have boring fighters that people don't like watching because they just sort of sit there and they don't do anything. They only respond to threats. So unless you
Oh yeah,
ask them, you know,
they're the floating head in the room,
yeah,
and they'll ask, "Is there anyone near me that I can attack?" Because I'll be ready in case someone comes close to me.
yeah, and that's the guy that's just sort of standing there, and he'll throw a jab out, and and you can't hit him with anything because his defense is too good, and it's like I hate that. But when we're sparring, maybe that guy's gonna do a bit more interesting stuff. He'll take a few more risks because
I
nobody
don't know.
wants to.
I never fought anyone for fun in real life. I never practiced hitting somebody
Yeah.
for fun or for real life. I wouldn't know.
That's how you figure out stuff too. Is if you just do what
I
you
mean,
know, you don't
when
learn anything.
I went to not judo. I went to kung fu lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So you're practicing against somebody else. It was interesting. It's practice. I just called it practice, I guess. But one day I just said, you know what? I probably should just learn how to use a gun. It might be quicker. But California, they make it hard. They make that really hard.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, even in places where you can have a gun, I always make people say that, but being a decent shot and a martial arts instructor, I always make the argument, okay, you are talking with your friend and suddenly a guy walks in between you and he's got a knife. Are you going to shoot that guy and then possibly shoot your friend because he's right behind him? Or would you rather know how to wrestle and try to take the guy down and take the knife out of his hand?
That's true.
Or you're in a big crowd. There's lots of people. Do you think you could you don't have the gun drawn yet? Some crazy guy throttling you, and it's like, well, if I go for my gun, he's probably laying hands on me, and I won't even be able to get to it in the first place. That happens with cops all the time. I mean, you can look up a million videos of some cop getting blindsided.
Yeah,
He gets
people
taken
know
around.
that the cop
Yeah,
the cop, they can see the cop's gun and
yeah.
stuff, but
He's reaching for his
I like it
gun.
when the girl's being attacked and she pulls a gun out of nowhere and just shoots the guy, and
Yeah.
he's totally surprised.
Yep.
That's always cool to watch
Mm. But
because you're thinking, oh, this poor lady, she's gonna get murdered, and then oh, she pulls out a gun and shoots him,
mm,
just pow 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 in the
yep.
chest. And it's just a little tiny gun.
Mm.
The guy's still standing, but then she points again to shoot a fourth time, and the guy goes, "Oh no, no!"
Yep.
And then he slowly starts to fall over because he's bleeding out.
Yep. Some like 2 to 3 shots stop most civilian involved attacks. Not because they end up killing the guy, but because most people get shot at 2 or 3 times and go, "Oh crap."
Yeah, so if I'm using a gun in an RPG
Hmm.
on my character sheet, I just have. I'm not counting the bullets. It always works. The gun just always works. Once in a while, if I do a critical fail on the roll, the GM can describe what happens with the gun. Maybe he's tired of me using the gun and he makes it just go away. The gun breaks.
Squib load. Walked out of
For my
timing.
character sheet, all I have is the weight of the gun
Hmm.
and how far it shoots. And then I also have a gun skill number.
Hmm.
So I can make stuff up. Like my gun skill lets me know how much the gun's worth. Or who manufactured the gun. Or is it even worth carrying around? Are there better guns than this one?
Is
I
it
can use my
legal
gun
to
skill
carry
for
where
that.
you're at?
Huh?
Is it legal to carry where you're at?
Yeah.
No, if you end up having to use it, or the cop's gonna come and be like, "Well, you're under arrest because you're not
One
allowed to
thing I
have
like
that."
is when there is a shooting, like at a mall or something like that,
Mm.
in a state where everyone has a gun, the shooting doesn't last very long
No, yeah,
because the good guys pull their guns out.
yeah,
But in a state where no one has a gun except for the bad guy, that's always horrific.
yeah, yeah.
That
It's
never
not
turns out
exactly
good.
rocket science, you know. It's some
I'm sure at the rally that Trump was at, I'm sure everyone probably had to leave their guns at the front booth.
well, it was in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's got pretty strict gun laws.
Oh, they don't have guns anyway.
Yeah,
A lot of places they just have the metal detector searching you every time you walk through the thing.
well, and there's a there's a term called program compliance, which is even if it is legal for you, even if you do own the gun, how likely are you to carry it? Because lots of people, they'll think, oh, I don't need to learn, martial arts. I'll just have the gun. And I'm like, okay, how often do you practice quick drawing your gun? They're like, oh. It's like, okay, how quick could you draw it right now? It's like, well, I couldn't because it's in my car. Like, well, it doesn't do you a lot of good then if I attacked you right here.
Yeah.
So many people leave their guns in their cars and then they come back and they're like, oh, my car got broken into. And it's like, where was your gun? Oh, it was in the center console. Well, hope that wasn't registered to your name. That could be an interesting thing to roleplay. Guys running around town, murdering people in your name. Be a cool thing to do in Shadowrun where you got like a digital signature to the gun, and so it's uploading every time it gets shot. The police, or every time you shoot the gun, the police get a signal that's like, this guy's gun was fired, and you have to be like, it's not me. You're arresting me, and the gun's still going off. It's not me, man.
Is that a thing yet?
New Jersey
GPS guns?
New Jersey was trying to make it a thing. They have a law which is as soon as a smart gun becomes commercially viable, it will legally be the only thing anyone's allowed to own in the state of New Jersey. that law got stricken down recently, I think, because it's so vaguely written that it's pretty much unenforceable. But
That's good.
there are a couple of different. Remington tried to do it with the bullet itself, which is where the bullet is electronically activated. So whenever you pull the trigger, it sends an electrical signal to the bullet, and then if the little radio transceiver in the bullet gets like a wrong signal, then it can just go, "Oh, I won't fire." Such as you got a fingerprint scanner on the side of the grip, and it goes, "That's not the fingerprint that's registered to this gun. I won't activate the bullet." Um,
That's kind of cool, I
yeah,
suppose.
it's pretty cool. The problem always is that the bullets are really expensive because each of them has this little microchip in it. Uh, if your thumb is smudged because it's got oil or something on it, or you're wearing gloves or anything like that, then your gun doesn't work. Uh,
That
you,
sucks.
yeah. If you have a friend that
That's
wants
a
to shoot,
terrible thing then.
if you have a friend that wants to shoot your gun, now you have to go. Hold on, I have to register you with the gun. There was a company that did it pretty well recently, but I don't think they're out yet. I think they're in like the prototyping phase, and they seem to be really effective on it. And what theirs is it's got a camera in the scope or the optic that faces you, and it's facial recognition. So as soon as you hold the gun up to your face, then the light turns green and you can fire it.
Well,
Yeah. So there's some pros.
it sounds like the gun. It would just not be complicated,
Hmm.
not be complex, but just be burdened, I guess.
Yeah, I mean you're adding an extra step. I mean that's again one of the things with revolvers that isn't. It's not a mechanic on the sheet, but
I mean, doesn't
it's
the
all I have to
Second
do is
Amendment
that, and then
the
I it
second
goes. You know.
the Second Amendment means you can own you have the right to bear arms, right?
Yeah, shall not be infringed. That's all it says. You have the right to bear arms, and you have the right to form a militia. That's and then yeah, that's it. It's pretty short bill. It's or amendment to a bill. Uh,
And when they
yeah,
meant press, they meant press, or did they mean internet access, or did they
yeah,
mean streaming, live streaming, or did they mean
yeah.
they wrote the rules kind of vague to begin with?
Mm-hmm. And
Because
that was on purpose.
they knew that 200 years later, flying cars would be a thing.
Yeah.
And states can always ratify stuff later or add amendments to it. The people that were watching, most of them were from Twitch, and they're just bots.
I
So
see that. Yeah.
they have nothing good to say.
Uh,
I don't know how to block Twitch yet. I don't have the
so
powers yet.
yeah, I have no idea.
But I
I don't
thought
know
surely
Twitch
no one
either.
at this time of night is on Twitch, but they're there.
No.
It's always the same guy.
Yep.
So anyway, I gotta go. I need to go eat something. I need to get some ice cream because I'm burning up in this place.
Yeah, I should go to bed.
Is it hot where you're at?
We actually have record low temperatures this week because of the hurricane coming up through Texas.
Wow.
I know it's only like it's
It's making
only
it hot and muggy. It made it hot and
yeah.
muggy in California.
No, it's only 90 in July. Wow.
Well,
That
today it
actually,
was 80. Today it was 85, but with the mugginess, it feels like
yeah.
you're like in a shower. It feels like you're in a shower when you go outside.
Oh, yeah. It's about 60% humidity, but that 90 and 60% humidity versus 104 and like 20% humidity. That's really pick your poison there.
Yeah.
The problem with 104 is your air conditioner. It stands no chance. It
It's almost 70 degrees still
Mm,
at 2 in the morning over here.
yeah,
So that's what it's going to start. It's going to start at 70
yeah, yeah. It's
when the sun
65
gets
right
up.
now, so it's unseasonably cool for the South.
I would think it would you consider your state arid, barren, desert,
Uh,
desolate, flatlands,
Depends on where you're
badlands?
at. If you're in southeast Oklahoma, it's marshy swampland. If
Oh,
you're
good
in
grief.
if you're
I
in
didn't know that.
central, yeah, if you're in central Oklahoma, it's plains. If you're in northwestern Oklahoma, it's arid badlands, plateaus.
Oh,
Yeah,
tumbleweeds? Where are the tumbleweeds mostly?
yeah, northwest. Yeah, that's northwest
So,
is nobody
so
lives
the
there.
where's Ringling? Which one would
Oh,
Ringling be in?
um, we'll have to look that up. Ringling is it's Jefferson County. Jefferson County is dead center, I think. No, no, Jefferson County. It's center south. So you're up towards northern Texas there, which is starting to get arid again.
Yeah, like parts of California are desert,
It's
and now it's even worse because you're pretty much not allowed to use your garden hose anymore to grow
yeah,
anything.
uh-huh.
So everyone's yards are dead.
Yeah.
No one waters anything anymore. So they get this artificial grass put in their front yard.
Oh god, yeah, it's terrible. But yeah, yeah, Ringling, you threw me off guard there because I was like, oh yeah, that is in Oklahoma. Yeah, I always forget that because it's such a little town. It's like less than 1,000 people there.
Yeah, it's
Um,
just a podunk
yeah.
town.
Uh.
Imagine what it was like in the 40s.
Oh yeah. You can say that about a lot of towns in Oklahoma. There's just so many places that they just dried up when the oil was gone, or they dried up when the mining was done.
Yeah.
Like in the 40s, we mined all of the uranium that was in Oklahoma and sent it to make the bombs, and it's gone now. We don't have any more.
You don't have any more uranium.
Nope, we just mined it all up. And there's
Yeah,
Pitcher.
all the silver is gone from Southern California. All the gold is gone from Northern California.
Uh, they mined all of the lead and something else, maybe zinc, the lead and zinc out of Pitcher. I don't know if you know about Pitcher.
Where does
It's
lead come from?
the
I always
ground.
think lead is man-made, so you can dig up lead.
Yep, it's usually found next to silver veins.
Oh, okay.
You find it in an ore called galena, which is like a 3-to-1 lead to silver mixture.
I see.
So if
What
you're
about
digging,
aluminum?
aluminum's tricky. Aluminum is usually in a weird reddish ore called bauxite, and it's really difficult to actually turn into a metal. It was a useless rock until like the 1920s because you have to get it really really hot to actually melt the metal out of it.
Oh, wow.
The tip of the Washington State Monument is made out of aluminum because it was the most expensive metal at the time, and now it's worth like $4 in scrap or something like that.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Well, I got to get going.
Yep, that was fun.
It was fun. No, I always like getting a different point of view on
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
That's why I do these streams.
Yeah,
I want to hear someone's honest, humble, personal opinion.
yeah. And you know, I before you said it, I wasn't even thinking like, oh yeah, does it matter if all the players are doing first person or third person? So that is something. That's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, because in the chat earlier today, someone said, Well, I talk in third person all the time, and I say, well, and I don't lose immersion, but what about? And I said, what if your other players lose immersion
Yeah,
every time you
exactly.
speak in
It's
third
the
person because they're talking in first person? They go, hmm. So these things have to be said, otherwise people don't think about it.
it's a multiplayer game, right?
I mean, last time I talked about this kind of stuff with people was in 1997, and video conferencing was just like this, but our cameras were, 300 by 200 resolution.
Yep.
And we all sounded like we were underwater when we talked.
Yeah.
And you were lucky if you got more than 15 frames per second on
Yeah.
dial-up.
Hey, in Oklahoma, I mean, it was about like that in 2007.
What?
Oh yeah, I had dial-up in 2007. It was, you,
I've had fiber for like 20 years now, I
yeah, it was,
think.
yeah. No, I mean, they wouldn't even, well, where I live, they wouldn't even lay fiber optic. They were like, well, you could do satellite, and then every time a cloud comes over, you're just.
Yeah, that was Hughes satellite over here.
Hmm.
People put the dish antennas on their roof, and then on a
Yep.
cloudy day, they have no internet.
Yep. And you're outside trying to aim it and yelling at the people. Is that better? Is that worse? Yeah, I don't miss those days.
Yeah. Yeah, people thought, oh, I can steal from cable if I get a satellite. Okay.
It's not in geosynchronous orbit aimed at you or anything, you know.
Anyway, I will
All
see
right.
you later,
See,
probably later today.
probably.
Have fun.
Yep.